Good day everybody, welcome back. It's been probably a long awaited update video after the events at the last race at Brands Hatch. So what I want to do today with today's video is I want to explain what's gone on software wise. So I want to go through the calibration files and through the log files and explain to you a little bit about that. Moving forward, I'm going to be doing all the calibration myself, but what I'm wanting to do is the purpose with all the videos that I put up, I want to be completely transparent, and I want to enable, if I can, enable people to give things a go themselves, you know, do what I've done. I'm not a specialist, I'm not qualified in these things. I've just researched in the given area, whatever I'm doing, and then giving it a crack. So I'm just sharing that information with you to see, you know, so it could possibly help you and maybe give you the motivation to not be as scared of some of these subjects, some of these fields. This subject is the one that I've always personally been the most scared of, the mapping. In the UK, the scene, I'd love to change it if I could, but the scene is the best way I could describe it is it's smokes and daggers. It's got like a negative sort of aura around it. So currently you'll take your car to go and get remapped, and the person doing the remapping is very secretive. Do you know, like it's a black art, like black magic. Do you know what he's doing? I don't like the Americans in a lot of the things they do. Not like that. I'm not like categorizing like that. But one thing I do I do like is the way there's a lot of mappers. Everybody maps out in America. That's what I was getting at. The bit I don't like. But on the backhand of that, I do like it because there's a lot of information out there. It's very, if you go into a mapper, he's quite open to share what he's doing. So be like, well, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it, and he's quite willing to help you. I find in the UK it's very secretive, and there's a lot of ulterior motives with people. So because of this, I'm investing the time now. I'm teaching myself, and yeah, moving forward, I think it'll be better. When I've looked at some of the people that I sort of look up to in this field, the likes of Andy Forrest, Simon Norris, you know, people like that. They've built things themselves, and they've taught themselves things. Do you know, like, and I think as a package, as a time attack competitor, as a package, it makes for the best competitors. If you look at what Andy Forrest's done, he basically bought the ECU, bought the software, bought the cars, and he's just tried things out, see what works and what doesn't work. He's a very intelligent guy, obviously, don't get me wrong, but he's tried these things out. When they work, and look what he's achieved, you know. But the purpose of today's video is to go through. I'm not going to get it all in one video. This is going to be a long video, so just bear with me. But this is explaining what's going on software-wise. So what's been changed in the calibration from the previous mapping session before Brands to, well, it was still before Brands when we had the most recent calibration. But I'm not wanting to put blame on people or point fingers. I'm just wanting to be transparent, just put the information out there. So to explain what's actually gone on with the car at Brands Hatch, we had initially in the morning an oiling issue. So I'll put up in the screen a picture now, but I fitted, I don't want to point fingers and blame at people, so I'm not going to, but because ultimately it's me who makes the decisions, but I fitted a baffle plate, a Roger Clark baffle plate, which I'd ran all for the past 2 years, with a classic original, you know, just flat bottom sump, WRX sump. I fitted that alongside their full baffled sump. This became apparent on the warm-up lap. So session 1, first time off the trailer, we come round the first corner. Luckily, we've got the Aki sump fitted, which acts as a big damper, big syringe of pressurised oil. So we came round the first corner, and I've got a warning on the dash for low oil pressure, which is scary. So I've come straight in. Sorry, not the first corner, the last corner of the first lap. So it's clearways. Come onto clearways, and I've got some oil surge. Looking back through the GoPro footage, I've got a gauge obviously on the dash built in. I've got a gauge up on the screen, up on the top of the dash, a mechanical gauge, and then I've got a mechanical gauge on the back of the Aki sump, just fed through an AN line coming to the dash to another mechanical gauge. So what this does is, when I look on the GoPro footage, it tells me if I get a dip on the Aki sump gauge, it tells me it's deployed and done its job. So luckily, I've had that fitted, and the surge that I got coming around clearways, the Aki sump's accounted for and replaced the volume of oil. So if you want to know how the Aki sump works, I'll put a link up here for one of my other videos explaining it in a bit more detail from last year when I installed it. But what we've done from there is made the decision to remove the first baffle plate. So I'll put the picture up of the baffle plate that we removed. And then we've gone back out. We missed second session because of this, because I was stripping the sump and having to redo it all, which is fine. We accepted that when I made the decision to remove it. So we took that off. And then after we'd removed this, we went out for the qualifying session. Now on the qualifying session, I managed to get one timed lap of like a 1 minute 48, was it, or 20? It was a warm-up lap, so I can't remember what time it was, but it was a timed lap. So luckily, like, that was enough to win me the championship. That's all the points that I needed for the whole year, and then I'd won the championship. So I had to get recovered though on the second lap because I got a low oil pressure warning, come up. Now, looking into it now, we didn't know what was the cause back then. I know what the cause was now. So we'd had some bearing wear due to a software calibration issue, and the bearing material had made its way around to the oil pressure sensor, and it was intermittently blocking the orifice in the... I'll put a picture up. I'll get one off the internet. It's a non-solid state mechanical, the traditional auto gauge, pressure gauge, oil pressure gauge. And it basically, the bearing material was blocking the orifice, the little hole in it. So I was getting intermittent low pressure warnings, and not looking at the Aki sump gauge, to see if, because that shows the same pressure as what the engine's receiving. I didn't look at that because I'd overlooked it, and I thought, we'll just come in, we'll turn the car off, coast through the finish line, come in, get recovered. And so got back into the pits. I'm not very happy. I'm thinking, is the pressure relief valve gone on the oil pump? What's going on? Why have I got low oil pressure? So the final session was like an hour after the qualifying session start times. So we've got like 45 minutes in between sessions here. So the final came round. I've stripped all the front end off the car. The boost pipes are off. Everything's stripped, bumper off. I'm not in my race suit. Final comes out. Everyone gets called to go out. Everyone's out. And then I thought I'll check the GoPro footage, check to see if the Aki sump's deployed. So got the GoPro footage. I'm looking at it. It's not deployed. It's full. It's pinned, full pressure on the Aki sump gauge, which means it's a sensor fault. So I thought, I'm going back out. I'm going to go out, do a lap. There's nothing wrong with the engine. I've got, for some reason or the other, the oil pressure sensor's failed, or intermittently failing, wiring or mechanical issue. But obviously I didn't know it was bearing material now. So what I've done is throw the bumper back on, didn't even bolt it on, just a couple of clips, jumped in my race suit, no intercom, straight out, did a 53 on the second lap, enough to win. Not my personal best. Personal best was a 51.9. So I went, without going into it, but I went with, on the day I was trying to achieve a 50, something beginning with 50.99. That was my target time. So, and it would have been achievable, you know, if I'd not had the issues. So I did a 53, came in, my dad in the pits said, look, you've done a 53, whatever it was. I was like, it's not good enough. I'm going to go back out. So I went back out, got a 52, but on the laps, I'm coming onto the straights, I'm getting my initial spike of boost, and then I'm hitting a brick wall power-wise, and I'm like, what's going on? Do you know, like, there's something amiss. And then you're thinking to yourself, all this time, bear in mind, I've got low oil pressure warning going on in the background, telling me stop, do you know, and I'm just staring at the AccuSump gauge thinking, if that moves and goes down, I'm going in. Do you know, that's it, game over. But it didn't move. But what I was getting was boost. It was like I was hitting a brick wall. My boost was still pinned at 1.6 bar or 1.8 bar, something like that. But something was pulling loads of power. And in my head, I thought, oh, this is it. You know, I've done the new engine in, I've knackered it. But I've come all this way. I've worked this hard. I'm having a lap in. Do you know, I'm having it. I want to win. So went for it. Did a 52.4 something. James beat me. So really quick as well. Really quick time. He beat me by a tenth. I think it was like a tenth between all of us. But me, James, and the Porsche. Can't remember his name. But yeah, in the DC5. So lads, Sean and yeah, the DC5. I forget people's name. I'm terrible with names. But the DC2 and the DC5 pulled it out of the hat that weekend. Honestly, mega. If I'll put their links down below, go and have a look at them, because they're doing equally as mad stuff as me. You know, building engines the night before, and Sean built a gearbox. Sean and all them lads built a gearbox in the day, unbelievably. So some mega stuff going on in the background, what you don't see. But yeah, so we had enough to win, but we had this issue with the timing being pulled, which we found as what the timing has been pulled from the engine. So I then I checked the logs the next day when we got home, found issues that I wasn't happy with. So issues with the timing calibrations, and knock strategies, and variable valve timing targets and strategies, just stuff that I'm not happy with, which is what's leading on to this video now, which is why I'm going to do it myself. But then I've made the decision I just want to overview the mechanical side of things, what's going on, because this is the software side of things. They're obviously two very different things. So mechanically, I've pulled the engine, I've tore it down, I've took all the injectors out, stripped it back down to basically undone everything that I've done. Gone, taking it back down, taking the pistons out, taking literally back down to bare block to look at the bearings. That's what I wanted to look at. So upon inspection of the bearings, which I'll put up in the screen now, the little ends of the con rods, I've got excessive wear on them. The sides of the pistons and the bores of the cylinders have got detonation wear on them, which obviously when you get uneven burns going on in the combustion chamber, you'll get little pockets of explosions going on all around the piston, and that increases cylinder pressures tenfold, and that pressure can't get out anywhere, so it's trying to get out past the piston and past the rings. And you would normally, on maybe a lower quality piston, you would get ringland damage. It would crack the ringlands. Now luckily everything's been inspected by Steve Geary, so shout out to Steve again, down at Roland Allsop, and everything's good to go. Do you know, it has got wear on it, but the small end's got wear just on the lower half. I'll put a picture in now. The piston crowns have got scoring on, do you know, in the bores, which is where the detonations, the extreme cylinder pressure is trying to get out, and it's happened right at top dead centre, you know, where the most cylinder pressures is occurring. And then the piston skirts are all clean. So if it was a case of overheating or tolerance is too tight on the bore, then you would have it nipping up. and the place where the tightest tolerance is on the piston skirt. So that's where you would get the nipping up showing. You can have a quick Google and have a look, see for typical piston damage. There's plenty of stuff on there, you know, but you can read what damage has occurred from what damage is on the piston. So that's what's happened. I'll put put pictures up now, but you can see the detonation marks on the head gasket as well, on the side of the head gasket, and then it transfers all the way through the engine. So we've got wear on the underside of the piston where the gudgeon pin goes through, on the top part there, because the force is acting upon the top of the piston head. We've got wear on the lower portion of the connecting rod, which is obviously the force transferring through from the piston down into the gudgeon pin, and then the gudgeon pin is going down into the conrod, forcing the energy through down that way. And then each time these events are occurring, the force that's acting upon the cylinder pressures that are tenfold increased is actually hydraulically pressing the very thin film of oil out from in between the gudgeon pin and the small end and the big end bearing and the crankshaft, and it's actually then allowing metal on metal contact, which is then causing the wear, and it's slightly polishing the lead coating on the bearings and the brass on the small end. So as you see in the picture that I'll put up, we've got wear to the big ends, and then we've got a little bit of wear on the small ends, but not on oil starvation, because we haven't had oil starvation. So some people were pointing towards oil starvation, but that's not the case. That's not the issue. So moving forward, what we've had done is we've had the piston crowns relaved, you know, cleaned up. We've had all the bearings I'm replacing, and I'm going from ACL to Marl now. Marl's a proper motorsport bearing. The quality difference from... There's nothing wrong with the ACL. I've never had issues with the ACL, but the Marl is the better bearing out of the two. So we're moving to the Marl bearings now on the big ends and on the mains. So we're changing them. We're having a rehoning put on the small ends, you know, just to give the crosshatch effect for the oil to get in. The blocks being rehoned, so we're going to lose half a thou clearance, so we might get a little bit more noise because we're increasing the cylinder. It's a combination of the two. The piston to cylinder bore, you know, clearance. We're increasing that slightly, maybe half a thou. So then we're having a new ring pack, new piston ring pack, and the ring end gaps reset to suit. You know, because obviously we're increasing the bore, so we can't have the same piston rings because they would be too large a ring end gap, and you'd lose some spring tension. So, which is very important. So, spring tension, ring tension. Yeah, that's what we're having replaced. I'm still humming and ahhing on whether to upgrade the turbo and put another fuel pump in the fuel system. But we're having the injectors flow tested as well and cleaned. Yeah, so that's what's going on mechanically wise. So I'll be doing the rebuild on that again over the next week or two, and then software wise, I'm going to do sort of like a bit of a series. But what we're going to be doing is, as I say, this video I'll explain this everything software wise, but we're going to be doing like a bit of a series, and I'm going to be going through every aspect, explaining what I'm doing, how it works, and then actually real world doing these alterations and mapping the car myself. So that's in short. I could ramble on all day about it, but that's in short what we're going to be doing, and hopefully it'll help you guys watching to be able to have a crack at this yourself. You can obviously pause the video, rewind, look exactly what I'm doing, familiarise yourself, and most importantly, if you don't understand something, if you're like, well, I see what he's getting at there, I can see how he's going about this, I can see what he's changing, but if you don't understand why I'm changing it or what I'm changing it, that's what I'm going to try and explain. But if you still don't understand, just spend some time. There's no rush in any of this. That's where we start making mistakes, when we're rushing. But spend some time on Google it, go on the links below what I'm going to add, which is to the Syvecs website. If you're running a Syvecs, go on the link website. If you're running the link, I presume they've got tutorials and videos. And another one is HP Academy. Now, you can pay for some of the videos, but a lot of their videos are very informative without paying for them. So the online, like the free videos, you know what you get in your, you'll get them on your emails. You know, come and see this seminar, blah, blah, blah. They're very informative and they give a lot of information. Obviously, they're paid courses. I've paid for them in the past. Some of the cam tuning courses and stuff, they go into even more detail. And the benefit that you're getting from these type of courses, which they never used to be around years ago, but they get rid of all of the grey areas of, say, if you'd trawled the internet, trawled Google and all the forums for three days, you'd get maybe 20 bits of information, and you'd have to summarise and come out with what was real and fact and what is fiction. And it's still never a black and white. So you're having to use like your knowledge mixed in with it and common sense, if that's even a thing, common sense, but it should be called rare sense, but we won't get into that. Yeah, so you have to then like make your own like evaluation from it and conclusion, and then go from there. And you're still guessing a little bit. So what the HP Academy and other companies like that have brought to is they've got all that information there, but it's factual, black and white. So you can actually go off that and go, I'm going to make changes here, here, and here, and it's going to do this, this, and this, and I fully understand it now. So yeah, I don't want to go too much further into it because, as I said, this is a long video. It's going to be a long video, but there's a lot of information to cover within it. So I hope that's gone over what's gone on with the car. If you've got any questions, then drop me a message, and I usually, well, I reply to everybody. So drop me a message, and I'll try to help out where I can. But or comment below, comment on this video, and I'll try and get back to you all. But yeah, that's what's going to be coming ahead over the next few weeks. Undecided whether I'm going to make Snettern yet. It's probably going to be a no, because I don't want to rush things again. It was a lot of stress and a lot of rush, and I have actually got a girlfriend, and she is very understanding, but it's too intense. There's too much, going on. So yeah, I'll flip over to the laptop now, go onto the screen record, be a voiceover, and I'll probably speak to you at the end of this. So here we are on the laptop. It's going to be like a bit of a Syvecs lesson, like a learning lesson, Syvecs 101. What I thought I'd do is, there's a few areas that I wasn't familiar with the Syvecs system. So I've spent the past few months really learning the system and how everything is. But I thought I'll go on Syvecs website, and they've got a load of videos there that go through everything, explaining everything. And I've probably been about a week now, maybe a week and a half, teaching myself. If there's an area, say, I don't know, for example, variable valve timing, there was a few aspects of it that I didn't understand fully. So I've been on Syvecs website, watched their videos, and then done a bit of delving online. YouTube videos, High Performance Academy's been good. I'll put the links in the description of this video for it. But yeah, I've just taught myself, same as I've done everything else. And now I'm gonna delve in, as I say, and do everything myself moving forward from here. But what I want to do is I want to load up. I've got on the screen now. We've got 2 copies of SCAL. SCAL is a software that you'll use. You get Syvecs Suite, which you'll download, and you get 6 or 7 applications for the laptop to do the different things on the Syvecs that you need to. So I've got in front of us here now on the screen 2 copies of SCAL open. Now SCAL, for those of you that don't know, is the calibration. It's for doing all of the engine calibration files, viewing them, editing them, connecting to the car ECU live. It does everything in that respect. We've got other apps that I'll go through as I'm going along, but we've got SView, which is for viewing your data, your logs that was being recorded by the ECU as you're driving or running the engine. S data is for downloading that data. We've got S monitor. There's a few different ones, but mainly today all we're going to be using is scal and sview. We're not connected to the car. There's no engine in the car, but yeah. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to load a calibration into the screen. This is what you can see now. So you can do all this with the shortcuts on the keyboard, but I'm going to do it with the cursor just so you can see what I'm doing. So file, load, then we're going to go, where have I got it on here? I've got it saved to desktop. So this is the original map file that was on the car. I've got loads of map files on here, but this was the one that was on the car on the 22nd of September. So this was just before we went for our update on the map. So as it says amend there, and the new one says amend to, I'll load that into the other screen. So click that. We want it in generic because we want, to explain these two options here. The top option is to load in a generic, so it gives you all of the options, to adapt everything in the software. The basic only gives you basic options, so for beginners, it doesn't overwhelm you as such. There's only basic things to change in there, and I'm pretty sure you can lay that out as you wish. What you want to be on there. So sorry, we're going to go on generic. I'm going to tap OK, tap enter there. So this is loading. This is loading the cal file into the scal there. Been a bit slow today. We'll go on to the other screen and we're going to load in, same principle again, but we're going to load in the, go on desktop, the adapted file from said tuner. So this is the file that has been modified to suit the new engine and camshafts. So we'll click on that and then we'll click that. It says amend to at the end, 27th, which this was, this is when I saved the file after going to said place on the 26th. That hence the date 26th. So I downloaded it from the car on that evening, at 12:30 at night. Yeah. Anyway, we'll click that, load that into here. So we've got that now, have we? I don't know why it's going slow today. Maybe too many things open, but yeah, we've got that. So now what I'm going to do is, so we can see what's been changed. It's quite good in the scal suite. I'm going to overlay this file on top of this file. So it's not going to give the information that's in this file. It's just going to give yellow markers. But you'll see when I load it on. So we go paste cal, load. So that would be pasting a calibration as such. So we'll go desktop and we'll click that original one there. As you can see, 22nd. I just want to save that. I'm late again, 11:09. I spent some late nights in this unit. Yeah, so we'll load that on. Press OK, basic. So now, as you'll see, you've got a little, can't think of the word there, but a key, is it? Is it called a key? You can't see it anyway, but there we go. So we've got a little key and it says, it's colour coordinated, so patchable, which means it's pastable, like that you can paste it straight in and store it to the device. So you can click device and connect, and then device and program, which would program what's on the screen onto the ECU. But green means it's identical. Non-patchable means it's equivalent, and then we've got patchable, equivalent, and different but pastable. There's a couple of us there, not pastable, and then non-patchable, identical. But we're looking at the bright yellow, which is different but pastable, which means there's been differences changed, and you can paste it into this calibration to store it onto the ECU. So as you can see, there's not a great deal that's been changed. So what I'm wanting to do, just being completely transparent as always, as I always am, I just want to go through and show you what's been changed and then explain it a little bit. And depending where we're up to in the video, I'm going to go through what I'm going to be changing, what the things that I am not happy with detail wise, and things that are not set up just from what I've been learning. And then it won't be this video, but over the next few weeks, as we've got the engine back I'm back in the car, I'll be starting to go through the tuning and showing you literally live stuff, you know. So I'm going to be tuning it, you know, on the road as such. It'll be on an airstrip, but on the road, and I'll show you what I'm going to change and then the effects of it in the logs and etc. You know, go from there. But for now, we'll go through these files and I'll show you what's been changed. So what I'm going to have to do is keep flipping between these two cal files because, as I say, these yellow markers are only showing me what has been changed. It's not showing me what they've been changed to. So, well, sorry, this file on the screen here, it is showing me what they've been changed to. So we've still got the new file here and the old file here, but as I say, the old file is pasted over this file just to show the changes. So we'll start at the top, nice and easy. Click cal switches, so it's because it's telling me we've got something that's changed there. So we've got go down to launch control, which I asked for this to be enabled. The strategy was already in the ECU, so all these are patchable, identical. So nothing's been changed in them. But the yellow one there, if we click that, so press enter, we can see this has been changed from off to on, and we can see this by going in the old file. So we go calibration switches, we go launch control, we go launch switch, and as you can see, it's off in this file. So in all of the calibrations, it's switched off. So we just literally press enter, and then we can go on if we wanted it on in calibration in cal switch 3, which is the rotary switch on the dial. It goes files 1 to 6. So we don't want to be adapting anything, so we'll turn that bit back off. But all that's been done across the two files there, very straightforward. You can see this. All 6 have just been highlighted, so shift and then the arrow, you know, all the way across, and then enter, and then off. And as you can see, that the file on the right hand screen is now identical to what it was before. So that's very, very simple, you know, to do. So we'll just put that back to what it was. So we press enter, on. So now we have launch control strategy enabled. I'm not going to go into. So I've just realised, excuse me, by pressing escape, which is what you would press to get back out of each point, you know, in the map file, like what we're at now. By pressing escape like that, it's actually cancelled my screen recording. So we will have to press it rather than using the keyboard, because we don't want to be losing that every time. So we've gone back out of each of those now. I don't want to lose anyone on this, so we'll close, rather than it being scrambled all over the screen, we'll close each one that we've changed. So there's nothing else in calibration switches that's yellow, so we can close that. And we'll do the same on this screen. I'll just do it with a cursor so you can see what I'm doing. So the next thing that's been changed to yellow, as you can see, is run mode ignition, and there's a yellow padlock being placed on there. So you can put padlocks on various things so that you don't change them. For example, what's been done here, I'll show you in the fuel in run mode on the original map. So as you can see, base ignition time 1, which is the ignition time, the time that the injectors are opening for. It's had a padlock placed on it on time 1. So on my strategies, on my ECU, I don't want to bounce everywhere on this, but we'll just come out of that a minute and go into calibration switches, close that. So we'll go into ignition and fueling. Calibration switches, this is the rotary switch on the dash, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can assign various things to each of those calibrations on the dash. So I've gone into ignition and fueling, I've gone into base fuel map select, and as you can see here, calibration 1, 2 and 3, so switch 1, 2 and 3 on the dash are set to base map 1. As you can see up the left hand, the left hand side of the table here, we've got which base map is assigned, to which calibration. So 1, 2 and 3 are using table 1, and then all the rest of the calibrations I've only got up to 6. I've put a little grub screw on the calibration switch so it only goes up to 6, because I don't need any more. You can have up to, I think on my easy you can have 8 or 12, but yeah, so tables 2 are allocated for 4, 5 and 6. So that's straightforward. I'm just wanting to explain how this thing works, and that's the same with ignition maps. Closed loop Lambda tag, you can change whatever you want, boost control. You can have the targets, like for example table 1 is set to calibration 1, 2 and 3, table 2 to 4, 5 and 6. These are the boost target levels, and then you can have more things within that, but for example boost by gear here. But we'll go into this as and when we need to. So we'll close the calibration switches, we'll go back into run mode fueling, and I'll explain how this works now. So as you've seen in the other what I've just shown you, base injection table 1 for the fueling is set for V power in my application. So if we click on that, this table here is set to inject all of the fuel for V power. So if we just do like a little comparison to show you, we'll go say peak load area. Okay, will it let me go across? Yeah, peak. So sort of peak torque sort of area would be maybe 5,500, maybe 5,500, and we'll go 5,500. This is on this screen. This is manifold absolute pressure, so it's 1 atmosphere, which is what's around us all the time, which is 1 bar. So in short, you just add 1 bar onto this figure, and then that would be the total boost pressure. It's not the total boost pressure, but it's what you would read on a normal gauge that we would have in the car. So this here would be 2.25 bar of boost. Even though it says 3,250, that's in millibar, and it's got 1 atmosphere added to it. Manifold absolute pressure. So at 2.25 bar, we've got 14.40 at 5,500 revs. So if we go out of this and we go into table 2, so table 2 is for my E85 maps. So we'll go up to the top, so up to the same as what I just said there, so 2.25 bar, 5,500 revs. As you can see, it's 15.552, which is it's injecting more fuel in short, because the E85 requires more. It has a lower stoichiometric value, so it requires more fuel to be injected. So we'll go back into, that's just to explain sort of how the cal switch side of things work. So we'll go back into the next thing on this list that's been changed, which is a yellow padlock against the run mode ignition. So if we open that, base ignition angle 1, so we'll open it on this screen, base ignition angle 1, it's got a yellow padlock next to it, but the writing's not in yellow. So this means nothing's changed, it's just had a padlock placed against it. So the tuner's obviously forgot previously that he'd had my ignition table 1 and fuel table 1 is for V power, ignition table 2 and fuel table 2 is for both. They're both for E85. So he has put a padlock on fueling 1, as you see here, in both, but he's forgot in previous mapping sessions to put the padlock on the ignition table 1, as you can see here. So he's just simply put a little padlock on there. This is because, as I've explained, he might mistakenly, make adaptations when he's running on E85 in ignition angle 1, which is for the V power. So he's put a padlock on there so he doesn't do that, so it draws it to his attention. So we'll close that one because we're not in the fueling, nothing's been done there. So we'll open base ignition file 1 and ignition file 1. So this is for V power. This is for, so I don't run in V power, but this is the ignition tables for V-power. So I just want to show you that nothing's been changed in these files. We'll go down to, this is 7,500 at 2.25 bar, 7,500 at 2.25 bar. We're reading the same figures. So 15.41, 15.41, let's say 4,500, 21.59 at 1.35 bar. So 4,500 at 1.35 bar, 21.59. You can see, if you can pause the screen yourself there if you want, if you wish, and have a look at all the numbers in there. But nothing's changed; they're identical. So we'll back out of both of those. We'll close that because we can see what's been changed in there. Sorry, I haven't gone over the last. Open them back up. Sorry, corrections. So we've got something has been changed in corrections. As you can see, it's yellow. So we'll open those. Open that there. So if we go down, it shows us what's been changed. I should turn this off really. It's got previews set. It's blocking the it's blocking the screen, so I can't see. There we go. I want to turn that off. It's closed it all now. Typical. So yeah, we've gone into corrections. What I've done there, sorry, is you can go into view and you can click map preview windows, which when I'm just on the screen myself and I've got the full screen, set to one, file. When you're going down these lists, you can, when you click on each item, it brings up, as you've just seen, it brings up a little preview of the screen that you're going to open, which is quite useful. So I have it turned on, but I've just turned it off for the purpose of this video so it doesn't impede the screen, block everything. So we're going to click on this here because it's been changed. So we'll click on cylinder trim adder, and then we'll click on cylinder trim adder here. So as you can see, we'll move this along a little bit to the end, and you can see what's been changed. So we've had this on the left hand column here, or on the left hand part of the table. You can see cylinders 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then across the top you've got the RPM of the engine. So if you read down on the bottom here, in this little statement box here, this modifies the on-load ignition to compensate for varying individual cylinder requirements. So exactly as that says, you can put offsets in place in here so that it will pull whatever it's stating in here, which is in degrees. So it will pull 2 degrees of timing from cylinder 2 at 7,500 revs. So from the old file, he's actually added he's reduced the reduction in timing offsets from the old cal file to the new cal file in cylinder 2. I don't know what reason this might have been for. This might have been cylinder 2 was seeing higher knock levels. So he's for whatever reason, he's pulled some timing out there in this cylinder trim adder. So if you read it a little bit further down here, this is the other good thing about Syvecs, it explains stuff for you here. So this correction is only applied when the throttle TPS1, which is throttle position sensor 1, is above, and then this is a link so that you can click on this and it'll take you to the things that that this file's only applied to, if that makes sense. So if you click there, restricts application of the on-load individual cylinder fueling and ignition corrections, run mode fueling corrections, cylinder trim multiplier, and so these corrections are only applied when the throttle position 1 is above this value. So if we can click on those, and then it brings up this cylinder trim multiplier table, and it's what it's saying is anything that you adapt in this file has an effect on the file, this table. So we'll go back over that anyway. So I want to be back into cylinder trim adder there. So bank 1, what's it saying there? Bank 1 run mode ignition is calculated as follows. Ignition base, global adder, ignition. Right. So anyway, that's too much for me to read into, but it's just saying all of the things that are affected if you adjust things in this table. So we'll back out of there. Obviously you can put this as a plus number or as a negative number, depending on what you want it to do, because here's a correction. It says cylinder trim adder, but if you're putting minus figures in there, then it's going to be minusing rather than adding. So we'll back out there on this one as well, and we'll close that corrections, and we'll close run mode ignition, because we've finished in there now. There's nothing else that's been changed in there. So close the corrections. You can just press enter on these, you know, when you're next to one of them little white, when you're next to one of these little white arrows, you can just press enter and it'll close it or open it. You see the direction changes. So the next thing we're going to go into is wastegate control, because as you can see that's yellow. So we'll click that. We'll click that on the other map file as well. And then base, sorry, close that one. I'm getting carried away here. Base control duties. Click on that one, and same on this one. Tell you what, I'll do it on this screen first so that you can see where we've got there from, and then I'll copy it on the previous screen. So base control duties, base wastegate duty. So this is the wastegate duty files. This is your the signal that's sent from the ECU to your Mac, to your 3-port or whatever port solenoid that you've got, that'll bleed more or less air to the actuator, which in turn opens the wastegate penny flap, you know, inside the ECU, and allows more or less boost to be bled away from the exhaust turbine wheel within the turbo. So we'll go on base control duties on the same, and base wastegate 1. So this on here, this is the one of the only exceptions where the tables are not set per cal file. So this table controls boost in all files. If you were to have, for example, let me go back and show you. If you were to have 2 wastegates, so an external wastegate, in my application I'm running an internal wastegate, so I only have a single one. But if you had, for example, a V engine, or if you had 2 external wastegates, then you have base wastegate duty 1 here, which you would allocate for 1 bank, and base wastegate duty 2, which you'd allocate for another bank, or you'd allocate to each side of a V engine setup on a, for example, on a, I don't know, an S4 twin turbo setup, twin turbo V6. You'd have 2 turbos with 2 wastegate solenoids. So anyway, we've only got 1, so we're going to go into the map file. We're going to see what's been changed here. So as you can see, a little bit more duty has been added. A little bit more duty has been removed from the lower end of the table here, and right across and up the table. If we go up to, this would be 1.95 bar, because that's what the peak target levels that my engine's running. So that's the max resolution, you know, what I set the breakpoints to on this file. So as you can see, if you read in the bottom here on the little information screen, base open loop control duties. So open loop, that's closed loop is when it's reading from all of its other sensors. So it's gaining information. Let's say, for example, closed loop Lambda would be reading information from the Lambda sensor, and then using the correction table, you know, to adjust to that. But this is open loop. So base open loop control duties for each bank are set according to the engine speed and target manifold pressure. Base wastegate duties 1 and 2, but we're not using this application, with modification for throttle position, usually an increase in duty with closing throttle. Go down on that. This calibration is affected by the following. So if you change things in these files, this calibration will be affected. Obviously, if you adjust the engine speed breakpoints, then this top section here will be affected, and if you change the manifold pressure breakpoints, then this chart here will be affected. I'll show you real. Now what? We don't need to do that. No, I'll show you what it is, but I won't change it. So we'll go to wastegate control, engine speed breakpoints, and as you can see here, it goes from 3,000 to 7,500. So if you wanted to have an engine, if you changed your rev limit to 8,500, then you would adapt this key to have to suit. So it would maybe have different increments. You could add some more, resolution to that, and then you'd go back into all of the other tables, and they would be there to suit. The same with throttle position breakpoints. So 12.5%, in increments up to 100%, and if we go back, I did click it. Is it going slow today? Yeah. Sorry, I was pressing the right click. Also the same with the manifold breakpoints there. So that goes up to 2950 millibar, which is 1.95 bar, of boost as such, as I was explaining earlier. So that would change these keys on the top here. But as you can see, some duty has been removed from the table, across the whole table. I've not actually highlighted it all and seen. You can highlight the full table like this, up to say 6,000 RPM, and you could highlight that full section of table there, and then just press the plus button, and it would go up by. In here, it's going up by 1.3%. So it would be. I'm just trying to see what he's taking it up by. He's taking it up by 4 or 5%, I think, has he? Yeah, so 5% more has been removed. He's taken 5% duty out of the lower end of the map. Well, the lower RPM range there. So we'll back out of this, which is going to have the effect of opening the solenoid, the boost control solenoid, more frequently, which is going to bleed more boost pressure off to the wastegate actuator, which is going to open the penny valve more and bleed off more boost. That's with higher duty levels. So with lower duty levels, this is going to happen less. So the penny valve is going to open less, and more boost is going to be made lower down, if that makes sense. So that's how he's done that there. But you can see that across the two screens. So we'll close those in both files again. So we're finished on that section. The next part that's been changed is, well, before I go, I'm going to go to the end and then come back on myself. So there's only two more things that have been changed here. So we're going to open sensors. We're going to go defined sensors and trip setups. I'm going to go down. I forgot what changed here. Oh, sorry, knock control. So open knock. Knock is what the knock is pre-detonation, a pre-ignition, or uneven burns within the combustion chamber. So you're trying to obtain a nice even burn within the combustion chamber, so that as the piston's coming up, you send the spark signal at the correct time, so that you're creating one single clean burn, and it's going to generate the most cylinder pressures to power the piston back down again. And this is what you're trying to obtain, every time the piston's coming up. There's hundreds of variables to this, why this changes. But knock is very damaging to the engine, and it's when you get multiple burns within a cylinder. The cylinder pressures go through the roof, and it's not good on the whole engine. So when you get to this point, the knock sensor's there to detect this noise, and then it'll do something about it. So it'll pull a bit of ignition timing being the point in which the spark signal is sent to ignite the fuel in the combustion chamber, the amount that it's advanced, so before top dead center, so the amount that the spark signal is sent before the piston comes to top dead center. So obviously if that's too far advanced, the spark signal sent too early, the combustion happens as the piston's still coming up, which is then trying to shock the piston to go back down, which is not good for any of the components. So I've forgotten what we're into here. Sorry, we're going to go down to knock control, which is here, and we're going to go into gain tuning, which if we look on this screen is yellow, so that's what is changed. So if we look here, what this does is it basically turns the sensitivity down of the knock sensor. So on the Subaru engine we only have one knock sensor, and it's located above cylinder 4. So what you have to do when you're setting this side of things up is you have to set the overall gain. So if we go back into knock sensor, so you set gain control here, you would set this to a percentage where it was listening to it could hear enough noise, but if this was too high it would be hearing background noise and it would be hearing too high levels of noise, so you would get fake knock, as it's called. So once you've set the overall gain, then you go into gain tuning and you can turn individual cylinders down. Now on the Subaru engine, as I just said, the knock sensors are located above cylinder 4. So what you would have to do, and what you do have to do, which is unfortunately not being done correctly here, you would have to turn down the sensitivity on cylinder 4 because it's located on cylinder 4. So for you to listen to cylinder 1 and 3 correctly and get the right levels of knock coming through, then you need to turn the sensitivity on number 4 down, and then also turn the sensitivity on number 2 down a little bit as well, because it's closer proximity. Hope that makes sense. But what's been done here is the knock levels have obviously been coming through slightly noisier on cylinder 2. So from the old map here, this is the old engine, the semi-closed deck previous engine, if you've been keeping up with the build. So 0.60 gain tuning, it doesn't really matter what this number is, but you just need to look at it in relation to the other numbers. So we've got the full gain listening, if you so to speak, of what was set in the other file that I've just shown you. We've got the full listening on cylinders 1, 3 and 4, and then we've got a reduced listening as such. I know it's not the technical term, but a reduced amount of listening going on cylinder 2. So what he's done on this is he's turned that down further. So by another 10% he's turned it down. For whatever reason, he might have just been getting noisier levels coming through on 2 and just thought, I'm going to turn that down. I've not heard any knock through the deck cans that he's had on listening to the engine, so I'm just going to turn that down because it's not genuine knock. So we'll come out of that and we'll go back into the final thing that's been changed, and that is let me close this. So close that one. So we're going to go into variable valve timing. I'm going to go into the same on this map. Close that. Oh, opened it again. Variable valve timing. And then as you can see, we've got 2 yellow marks here. We've got one in the closed loop and one in the cam angle measurement. So if we open cam angle measurement, we've got 2, one in the VVT 1 inlet angle latch offset, so that's left hand side inlet cam, and then 2, which is the inlet cam on the right hand side of the engine. So if we click the same as what we've clicked in there in this, we'll open 1 and then we'll open 1 in here. So these are the latch offsets. So on the back of the camshaft, I'll try and put a picture in the screen here, but on the back of the camshaft, you have 4 pointers or markers on the back of the camshaft, and this is the angle at which the cam sensor is picking up these 4 pointers on the back of the camshaft. So this is set in, I'll just explain this a minute, this is set in the inlet angle latch points. So as you can see here, we've got, you can set this yes or no wherever you want, you know, like you could set this 120 degrees, and then wherever they are on the camshaft is where you would set them. So on this camshaft, we've got one that's at 90 degrees, we've got one at 270 degrees, we've got, and this is obviously, there's 4 on the back of the camshaft, 4 of these little lugs, but for every 2 rotations of the camshaft is 1 cycle of the engine. So in this setting, you would have to put 4 markers over a 720 degree cycle, because that's 2 times 360 degrees. So that would be 1 full rotation of the engine. So he's switched on the latch points, so these bits, you know, the lugs on the back of the cam, at 90 degrees, 270 degrees, and then the same, but at, you know, on the second rotation of the camshaft. So we'll back out of that. We'll go into the angle 1. So what's been changed here? As you can see, this is the latch angle offset. So this is what you're telling the ECU to offset the position of those set points, you know, that you've set in the other file that we've just said. So by putting an offset in place on these, you're in theory telling the ECU, you're telling the ECU to advance or retard from that position where those set lug points are, because the engine has picked that up as being that's where that point is on the camshaft. That's the mechanical point in which that's picked that up as being. So for, I don't know, if you've got something like slightly off cam timing, you know, on a fresh build, which is sometimes the case on the Subaru, you can put offsets in place here, so it advances the cam timing or retards the cam timing. So you're basically moving the set point on of where the ECU thinks that the cam is. There's loads of different reasons why you would need to do this, but that's just one example. So what he's done here, for one reason or the other, is he's added 3 degrees onto this figure, but only on the left-hand camshaft, so the driver's side camshaft. If we go back and could go on to inlet angle 2, and then we do the same on this one, inlet angle 2. See, they've not got such a difference on these. There's only 0.75 of a degree. So as you can see across the engine, the offsets that have been put in place on the latch angles are different. So for one reason or the other, these are different. So we're going to go back out of those 2, and then we're going to go into the other thing that's been changed, which is closed loop targets for the. So we'll close this one down as well. Closed loop, inlet angle target, inlet angle target. So these are this is the RPM versus, so RPM across the top again here, and then boost levels, you know, across the map here in millibar, manifold absolute pressure millibar. So what has been changed in these files? So if we have a look, go back down to the beginning. So everything looks relatively straightforward and the same. I'm just going along these tables and seeing what's been changed. So 4,000. So from 4,000, the target angles of the inlet camshafts has been reduced. So from 4,500 revs there, can you see? So this table, and this table. So I'll highlight them so you can see. And this table here, we've got slightly more advanced of the inlet camshafts. So these numbers here are degrees. So they're degrees of angle, degrees of camshaft advance. So only in the top one. So at 1.5 bar of boost, we've had another 1.5 degrees added, and then as you go up, we've had another 6 degrees added. 4 degrees, 4 degrees, and they're the same below that. So this is counterproductive, which kind of explains my graph, because normally what you would do with a variable valve timing, you would have more angle advance the lower the RPM and the lower the boost levels. So this makes sense, as down this side of the map there is more levels. You know, as the boost's coming on, you're advancing, you know, low RPMs, you're advancing the cam position on the inlet cam to increase the torque lower down, and then as you would get higher up in the RPM and higher up in the boost levels, you would reduce the cam timing, because it would be counterproductive as you get higher. As you see here, look, when you get right up to the top, 7,500 RPM, it's going right down to target levels of 2 degrees, you know, of cam timing advance. But yeah, this is so this is a bit odd that this has been changed here. It's nearly around sort of peak torque levels, but yeah. So from looking at the logs, so this is everything that's been changed within the calibration file. So we won't get into, is it worth it? You know, is it worth what's been paid? We don't need to get into that. I just want to be transparent and show you what has been changed, and then you can form your own opinion from there. But to say that the engine has had a full new engine built with slightly different compression ratios, it's had, the main important thing is it's had different cam profiles put in the engine. So the ignition tables need to be changed, and I'll show you that on the logs next. That's the next thing I'm going to go on to. The ignition tables are set for the old engine and not set for this new engine, as are a lot of other things. The two main things, well, three things I want to go over is now, looking through the logs, are to explain this variable valve timing and how I'm going to set it up, to explain the knock control strategy and how I'm going to set that up as well, and then also the ignition tables, how I'm going to set that up. So to explain this, I'm going to have to open the log files to, you know, explain how this works, and then I'll come back to this screen to explain, you know, how I'm going to set the cam timing up. So yeah, let me go to that now. So here we are. This is on now on SView. This is the other Syvecs program. I know this video is very long, but as I say, bear with me, because there's a lot of stuff that I want to go through and get across. I'm going to split it up into specifics, you know, like data logging in one video, and then etc. You know, moving on like that, moving forward. So I've opened SView. I've loaded into SView the A file, you know. So we've clicked file, load, and I've loaded in one of the files from. It's actually this file from the final. This is from the final at Brands Hatch. So we've got that loaded in now. What I've got open on the screen, it obviously looks a bit like there's a lot of information there, which there is. The right hand side of the screen, if we press, so if we're clicked onto one of these, any of them, if we just press O and then K on the keyboard, that abbreviates, that shortens to just what we've got on the screen. So if we go back, OK, that brings up every available recorded piece of information, logged piece of information that I personally have set, you know, to record. So if we make that, if we go smaller anyway, and we go okay, it tells you what information in here is on this screen in here. So in this one we've got Lambda, so LAM1, so the air to fuel ratio that the ECU is sniffing. Do you know how much oxygen there is in the exhaust? We've got the fuel duty, which is the duty cycle of the injectors. So how many times the injectors are opening and closing. You know, basically higher duty cycle, more fuel flow. We've got, I've done a diagram of that, and I'll show you in a minute as well. So we've got the cylinder 2 knock ignition retard and cylinder 2 knock. So that's what the ECU is listening to in cylinder 2 and hearing. And then once it's detected knock, the cylinder 2 knock ignition retard is how much ignition is being retarded in a degree form, you know, so 1.88 degrees in this given selection of this part of the map here. The ECU is retarding the ignition in an attempt to quieten the noise the knock level's getting. Then above that we've got closed loop lambda target. So this is the target that the ECU tables are set, you know, what lambda levels you want in the ECU to be set up for the given RPM boost, you know, load, whatever. Moving on to the second one, we've got map 1, which is manifold absolute pressure 1, boost levels. Fuel final 1, I don't know what, that must mean primary. I'm not, bear with me because I'm not familiar with every expression. I know what they are, but I don't know what the exact terminology are for all of them. The fuel base 1, this is your base fuel table, you know, what it's reading. And the fuel final is the final amount that it's injecting after it's looked at the lambdas, and say the lambdas reading, let's say here it's reading 0.827, whereas the target level's 0.830. That means it's reading a little bit lower than what it's targeting, so it's going to have to add a little bit of fuel. So that's what the difference in this would be. It would be the base would be what the table's telling it to inject, and the final would be what it's actually injecting, you know, to make the lambda correct. So then we go down onto the bottom table. This is the variable valve timing inlet degree target. So what the map table is targeting, you know, so what it's set to say like 26 degrees of cam time in advance at this given RPM and load. And then the variable valve timing in 2 is the right hand side inlet camshaft pulley, and this is the left-hand side inlet camshaft pulley, what it's actually angling at. Then we've just got RPM, just for a reference there. So what we'll do is, I'll go, initially, there's ignition to go on this as well, but what I'll do initially is, I'll zoom in on basically these top 2 tables first. So we don't need the bottom one for now, we just need these top 2 tables. So we'll pick a point here. So and I need to put RPM on there really as well. So 1 minute, let's put RPM on this table so we can see it. Put that there, so that's fine. And then we press OK again, and it gets rid of that. So we're going to zoom in here on this. So this is manifold absolute pressure. So we're on boost here, full boost, 1.6 bar. It will have been in Cal 4, sorry, here, which is the low boost map. It's got an offset in place, you know, so it doesn't reach the. It's got a 350 millibar offset in place, so it doesn't reach the 2950, you know, target 1.95 bar target. So it's targeting 1.6 bar, which is it's undershooting a little bit, but so there's your manifold absolute pressure. The blue line's your RPM coming up like that. So we've got, say, 5,250 RPM at 1.5 bar. If we flip back over to the calibration file now, and we'll go, if it's loading, yep. So we'll go in, what are we under here? We're under, looking at something else here. This is, right, so this is, we've clicked run mode fueling. So we're not in the cal switch, we're in run mode fueling. We've clicked corrections at the bottom there, so corrections. Then we've come to closed loop lambda, which is what we want to be in. and then we've clicked base target 1. So these are the target levels for the wideband sensor. So how much it's targeting, what air to fuel ratio it's going to be sniffing for, you know, how much oxygen it's going to be sniffing for at any given point. So what did we just say then? We said 4,500 RPM and 1.5 bar. So 2,500 there, 2,500. So it's targeting 0.77 lambda, yeah? So do you get what I'm saying now? You type in here what you want the air to fuel ratio to be targeting, depending on the RPM versus the boost. So as it's just coming up onto boost at the RPM here, you can see this sort of area. It's coming up onto boost. It's coming up the RPM. The air to fuel ratio is richening up. The lower the number, the richer the air to fuel ratio. So if we go back into the log file, this is shown 1.5 bar boost. We're saying there, 5,200 RPM. So we'll move along a bit. Sorry, 5,200 RPM. 0.77 is what it's targeting. So if we go back on the log, it's targeting not 0.83. Sorry, we're in the my bad. We're in the wrong file. We're in base target 1, which is for V power. So we want to be in base target 2, which is for E85, which is what we're in. E85 runs a little bit leaner than V power because it has a better cooling capabilities in the cylinder, so you can therefore afford to run it. Obviously, it's not knock retarded as well, but I mean just temperature wise, you can afford to run it a little bit higher in terms of leanness, you know, air to fuel ratio, less fuel basically. So we've got that's where we're at there. So it's targeting 0.83 AFR. Well, it's in lambda, sorry, not AFR, which is about 12.5, is it, to 1 in AFR, if you talk AFR terms. So if we look at the yellow line here, this is closed loop lambda target. So that just reflects what we've got in the map there. When it's met the parameters of whatever RPM and boost level, it's targeting 0.83 lambda. So the lambda there is following pretty closely. It's very close to being on target. It's maybe undershooting a little bit. Yeah, so we're targeting 8.3 and it's giving 0.822. So what the ECU is doing to meet this target level on this lambda that it's requesting is adding fuel on top of the base fuel injection time that you've got, which I'll show you. I'll click on that now. So we'll come out of this, we'll go into, sorry I'm jumping about a bit here, but yeah, I want to show you, if we're going into fueling, so we're going base injection time 2 because we're on E85 tables, if you remember. So go on that. So 5,500 revs, 5,500 revs at 2,550. So we're targeting 12.30 milliseconds, you know, of base injection time on the injectors. But what is in fact happening is we're undershooting for whatever reason. We're undershooting what that target is a little bit. So the ECU is actually compensating for that and adding the additional fuel to meet that closed loop target level. It's closed loop lambda target level. So what that means in theory is, from me looking at this here, that's telling me I need to go into my base fuel maps. The ECU is doing the job for me here, but I need to go into my base fuel maps and I need to make this base number read what this final primary number is. So we'll go back into here, and then this number here, just in this one section, needs amending. And obviously all the way along through the RPM range at that boost level, so this full row here would need amending, you know, more fuel injecting basically, from what the logs are saying. And then you could, if you were setting this up from scratch, you could then interpolate those measurements that you've made there from looking at the logs into the row above, then into the row above, and go on like that. And you'll see a pattern forming, and you can just add the percentage the higher that you go. So if it's, say, going up by 1 millisecond each time, you could just add that. Add 1 millisecond each time. It's not here, you can see this, but that's just what I'm saying as an example. And this is sort of now why you can see why it takes so long to properly set up and calibrate an ECU, because you've got this to do. This is in the fuel tables, just a few tables what I've gone through here. You've got exactly the same thing to do in the ignition tables, but you're using knock and listening for knock. So you're using both the knock detection that the ECU's got built into it, and then you're also listening to it with detonation cans in your ears manually, just as a checksum. And then you've got to set up all of your ignition tables doing exactly the same thing. So you'd have all of these tables here. You'd do the same thing, say 1.5 bar. You'd look across the board, and set one table up like that, and go back onto your logs. Say if the ECU was pulling 2 degrees of timing at that point, then you would take 2 degrees of timing off of that base map file, because you're making the ECU's job easier, closed loop in terms of closed loop adjustments. So there's that to do for wastegate control, variable valve timing control, fueling, so the Lambda, closed loop Lambda control, and your ignition control. So yeah, this is very easy and straightforward to understand once you can get your head around it, and you understand all of the processes of what's going on inside the ECU all the time. So controlling, so that's gone over briefly, sort of closed loop Lambda control, and then fuel injecting, how to look at what you've got and then adjust from there. So now I can go into variable valve timing. Briefly, I'll touch on this. So it's the same principle. You have a target table, variable valve timing, inlet, target, and then you have the outputs of the variable valve timing, both pulleys. So it's read what degree of advance it's putting on the timing. So for example's sake, the variable valve target here at 4,300 RPM, it's, as I was saying earlier, it's tapering off, on the advance, but it's targeting 3 degrees. You're actually getting 3 degrees on one inlet, but you're only getting 2.5 degrees on the passenger side. So basically you would go in and adjust the duty cycle. So I'll show you briefly here, but you'd adjust the duty cycle so that the control was better, so it was meeting its target. Also, you can see, like in places like this, like where it's not perfectly meeting its targets. You could get this perfect, like there's no reason why you couldn't. It just takes a lot of time. So you'd go back into Cal. We'll back out of this. We'll go into variable valve timing, which is down here. We'd go in closed loop. We'd click inlet angle target. So here shows all the targets, which I showed earlier. It shows the targets that the ECU is requesting that the variable valve timing meets. And then, in addition to that, we have the, to control that, we've got the inlet base duty. So this is the duty cycle that it's applying to the solenoid to allow oil flow into the solenoid, to allow oil flow into the whichever side it's requesting of the inlet pulley to advance or retard the cam timing. So as you can see here, it's very basically set up. The whole table is 39% duty. So again, you'd need to go in and you'd need to look at 2.5 bar. It's not meeting its target at 6,000 RPM, so it needs more duty putting in here so that it's putting more oil into the cam, to advance the timing to the point where you want it to. And this is not explaining everything, but this is just giving a brief overview, you know, of what needs doing. But it shows you that it's very base setup. It's not had the time required in the map to get everything as it should be perfect. And that's why I'm going to do it myself. But the other thing I wanted to go into was knock control. I want to try and cover everything, but I'm aware the video is going to be very long. That's why I'm going to break it up into specifics. But I just want to briefly go over stuff, so you've got like a brief idea, and then I'll go into detail in further videos, you know, about specific stuff. So the other thing I want to go into is I'll click knock control here. So this is the knock readings for cylinder 1, 2, 3 and 4. So as you can see, the gain control is set up completely wrong because we're reading much higher levels of knock on cylinder 4, and we know from what I've shown you previously that cylinder 2 has had its percentages turned right down. So cylinder 2 would usually be as high as cylinder 4 if you turn the gain correction off. So what we want to do here to set this up properly is, we'll zoom in, we want to go out in the car with our deck cans on, so we're listening to make sure it's not there's no genuine knock. And then what we want to do is tune this with the gain control, so with the gain control on the knock sensor. So we'll go knock control. It's not on this one, sorry. It's on sensors. Sensors, knock control, gain tuning. Want to do the overall gain initially to get it. Right, what I'm going to do there is I'm going to pause it, and while I could go on and on and on, I'm going to have to split this up into episodes because there's just too much information, you know, to get across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it up, as I say, into episodes, and I'm going to then go into detail of what each section is, how I'm going to set it up, and then actually setting it up. And then it will probably be the real world sort of examples when I'm doing it on the car, you know, doing the actual adjustments on the car, is obviously going to be all of the things that I'm covering in each of the individual separate episodes, all at the same time. So I'll be able to briefly go over things as I'm doing it, but obviously I won't be able to go into the same detail as what I'm going to go into in these separate episodes. So there's not that much information out there, I don't think. Not in the UK anyway, from real world applications. If you type in on YouTube Syvecs, Subaru, Syvecs, it doesn't matter what it is, it's the same software. If you type in Syvecs and then people actually using it, there's not that much information out there. It's very limited. So that's why I'm doing this, to try and help people. And yeah, I hope it does that. So stay tuned for the next episode. If you follow my social medias, Instagram, Facebook, etc., it'll keep you more up to date because I put on my story and stuff there with what I'm doing. But I'll put some details on social media, what the next episode is going to be on, whether it's going to be on, say, boost control, knock control, whatever. It's probably going to be knock control. So yeah, if you're interested, then subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode. But yeah, sorry it's been a long one, but yeah, bear with me and stay tuned for the next video. As I say, take it easy.